Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Those of you that are brand new here, my name is Anna. I am a macrame artist and teacher. And for this video, the first thing I want to say is just a huge thank you to everyone who commented on my last video with all the congratulations and encouragement and all the kind words. I really appreciate it. And what you might remember from that video is that I mentioned that I have some different macrame cords to try out. And so that's what I will be doing in today's project. And by different macrame cords, what I mean is, so far, I've only ever worked with macrame cords by the brand Bobini. And I've been extremely satisfied with them, so I never had the need to try something else. But a couple months ago, I think at this point, a lady has reached out to me through this YouTube channel. She is here in the Czech Republic as well, and she's soon going to be opening an online shop where she wants to sell cords, macrame cords and other supplies as well. And she asked me if I could actually test the cords that she plans to sell, because she herself is not as experienced in macrame, so she wanted somebody who has a little bit more experience. And so she kindly sent me two different colors of the same cord. They are these two. They are both braided cords in the 3mm size, so a little bit smaller than what I'm used to working with. So I usually work with 5mm, so these are a bit thinner. And they are in this, like, I think it was called like the aquarelle color or something like that. And then a neon pink. So I chose this color because this is something that Bobini don't have. They have pretty much every color that you can think of, but neons is not something that they really do. So I thought, why not? Let's just try that. And so throughout the video or at the end, I will talk a little bit more about what are the differences that I've noticed. If any, maybe it will be the same, but there definitely is a difference that you can see at the first sight, and that's the Bobini braided cords. They're always in this like a little bunch. Maybe I can show you an example. A bunch like this. So they're not on a roll, and when I cut them, I always have to find the end and then start pulling them out, measuring, cutting. Whereas these obviously are on a roll. And at first I thought that that means that I could use my stand, which you saw in the 3 hacks video. I think that's where I have it. But the problem is that my stand is too narrow. These rolls are wider than the stand, so I won't be able to use that. So I will have to get a little bit more creative in that part. So the way that I'm going to cut these is already different than what I'm used to with these guys. But I don't think that that's necessarily, good or bad. Maybe I'll see one way is easier than the other. So those were the cords that I will be using. And then my only other supply is a dowel. This one is 60 centimeters long, and that's it. We can start. So I'll go ahead, cut that first batch of cords, and then I'll show you how I'm putting them on, and we can take the design forward. So I actually ended up using my clothing rack and the dowel that I have ready for the project for cutting the cords. So the spool or the roll fits perfectly onto the dowel. So what I'm used to with the Bobini cords is that they're very stretchy, and therefore I have to measure each piece that I'm cutting individually to make sure that I am really cutting the right length. But these ones are not really that stretchy. So what I did is I only measured the first cord, and then I would always take the two and just kind of slide it. And once I got to the end of this one, I would cut the new cord. And that made the process so much faster. But again, that was only possible because these ones are not that stretchy. The one other thing I wanted to mention to you, what I've noticed is that because they are wrapped on the spool, on the roll, the cords are like squeezed, like squished. I'll show you a detail so that you can see what the first one looks like. That was kind of on the top. That's a lot more round. And then all of the other cords, and even the first one, like if I look at the other end, it's like, it's flat. It's flattened because it's all rolled, you know, tightly onto the roll. That flattens the cord, which is a little bit squishier than when you have like single twist or 3-ply cords, for example. I don't know if that will really have any impact on the look of the design or the way I'm working with the cords. Again, just something I'm noticing as I'm working with them. So now I've got all my cords cut, and I'll put them onto the dowel just with the simple regular lark's head knot. I've put up all the 42 cords with the regular lark's head knot, and now I can show you the design. Essentially, it will be a switch between some square knots and some vertical double half hitch knots. So let's start with the square knots right here. So for that first part of the pattern, I will be working with the first 6 cords that we attached on the very left, and I'll make 3 square knots at the top here. Just a super simple, it doesn't matter if it's left or right facing. I think all of us have a preference. So whatever your preference is, do that sided square knot. In the row underneath, I will take these cords and make 2 alternating square knots right underneath the first 3 that we made there. And for the third row, I'll still be working with those same exact cords, making 3 square knots right here. So we're kind of completely detaching it from the rest of the cords here and making our square knots. And now I'm going to repeat the alternating rows a few more times until I get to more or less like a square shape right there. Okay, and I'm happy with that. It is a little bit wider than it is tall, but I definitely know that I want to end on a row that has the 3 knots in there. So if I added one more row down here, which would make it exactly the same, I would only have the 2 knots here. So then I would have to add another one and so on. So I am going to leave it like this. So 3 rows that have 3 square knots across, and then we can move on to this section. And for that next part, we will be using those neon pink cords. So I've got one of them ready. And to start the vertical double half hitch knot, I'll take the first set of the 2 cords, put my neon pink behind them, hold it right there, then do the first loop around the 2 cords like this, tighten, and then hold that, and then do another loop right here, and then pull the cord through that loop and tighten. And then we tighten it to the top, and that's our first vertical double half hitch knot done. We can pull the short bit to the side or to the back. And so what I will do now is these vertical double half hitch knots across the 6 sections. So like we did 6 here, I will do, so that means another 5 right here. So for the next vertical double half hitch knot, create a loop right here, wrap the pink cord around those turquoise ones, and then pull through the loop. That's the first one. And second one, same thing, loop around it, and then pull towards the front. Now I do have a faster way of doing this. You can watch the video right up there. So it's similar to the fast method of doing the regular horizontal double half hitch. It's just applied a little bit differently, but same idea. Do the loops for the knot in your hand and then kind of pull the shorter cords, which are these, green ones or blue ones, through rather than having to wrap the long cord around it. So we made the 6 vertical double half hitch knots, and now we are going to keep working with this cord, but go back all the way again doing the 6. So to loop this cord around, make that loop right here, wrap the cord around the 2 in the middle, and then pull it through that loop. At first, pull it towards this side, but as you're tightening it, bring it around so that it's actually going to the other side, which is where we want to go. And when it's facing this way, we can make the other loop, go around the 2 cords in the middle, and then bring our working cord through that loop forward again, like that, and tighten. And now we can continue just like we did at the top, except going the other direction. And I can again use my fast method for making those knots. And now to switch directions again, to go to the right to add another row, we are going to make that loop behind the cords, loop our cord around it, and then pull to the side where we want to continue next. And then again, it can go to the front, around, and so on. And so like this, we will keep going through the rows until we get to the same length where we ended with the square knots here. So I ended up doing 7 rows of those vertical double half hitch knots, and you can see that it ends just a little bit lower than the square knots, but I think this makes a better square. So what I'm gonna do here is just quickly redo the square knots to make these gaps in between the rows just slightly bigger so that it ends a little bit lower, on the same level as these vertical double half hitch knots. And so this is the pattern. I'm going to repeat this for that entire first row. So then next, I'm again going to make the square knots. Then again, this patch of the neon pink, square knots, pink, and finish with the square knots at the very end here. Then I'll show you the second row just so you know, but like the pattern will be the same. We'll just change where these are placed. I finished that first row and did 2 parts of that second row, as you can see here, just to see how that goes. And so the square knots, those are fine, no issues there. But for the vertical double half hitch knots, I do want to show you a little bit of a detail and tell you a bit more about it. So when you look at this section and this section, they are still done in the exact same way. So I took a new cord, added it, and did the 7 rows. However, here we were pushing that first row all the way up to, squeezing it up to those lark's head knots. You can't really do that here because you have the square knots, right? Like right here, this is where we would be adding it. And so if you were to squeeze it up, it would first of all be crooked, or you would damage the square knots, either one. So you have to kind of leave a little bit of space at the top there, but still you need to make sure that this is a straight line. And then also all of the rows underneath it, you still have to keep that in mind to not like accidentally push them up or something. Now, as a result of that, this section is just like 1/2 centimeter longer than these first ones. So then with the square knots in the second row and then all of the rows underneath, you really have to make sure that there is those gaps in between there to make sure that these sections and these sections finish at the same length. So that's the bit of difference that you have to pay attention to now when working on the second and all of the other rows. What I always say, what always helps in any project, I think, to make sure things are symmetrical, if you stop every now and then, you take a step back, you take a look at it, just to make sure that you're going in the right line, you're going in the right direction, because we often, or at least I, when I'm doing all the knots, I'm standing pretty close to it, and I don't really notice the bigger picture, let's say. So that's why it helps to step back, see, is it straight? If you need to, just take a tape measure as well, make some measurements to compare, how long is it here versus how long is it here? Is it the same, etc. That's what I do like quite often in all of my projects. So that's a tip that I would give you. So I'll show you here then how I'm adding it, how I'm paying attention in that first row to making sure it's straight and I'm not damaging the cords. And then I'll just keep working on adding more and more of the rows until I'm happy with the length of the piece. I'm getting pretty close to the finish line here. I have changed my mind as usual throughout the project because originally I thought I would make like a square or a rectangle out of the entire shape, but then I thought of this idea of doing it angled like this at the end. I think it does look better, that it's just a bit more interesting, but also B, working with the smaller cords, the 3mm cords, means that to create this big shape takes a lot longer than if I were working with the thicker 5mm cords. So very honestly, I was also getting a bit tired. So this allowed me to make the entire design still like quite big, but I didn't have to do so many knots down here. So 2 more steps that are left now. The first one that I'm gonna do is take this piece, put it on my table, and I will glue with my hot glue gun all these leftover pink cords to the back of all those double half hitch knots. I will use the hot glue gun and a pair of tweezers as well. I think that will really help me prevent any burned fingers when working with that. And then the other step will be down there to cut the green cords at a certain level. I still have to see how exactly I'm going to do that, but I will film all of it so you will get to see.
Rain keeps on falling, but I can't feel it crawling down my skin. Numb to the world outside, I let the water fill me from within. You used to walk beside me, I used to be another man. Give me a reason, baby, something that I can understand. Lit up the sky tonight, let's set the world alight. Fill up this desperate show, oh, with your warming glow. I'm at my autumn low, oh, won't you take me home tonight? Break me or let me win, don't care, just let me in. Oh, this just tears me up, won't you just fill my cup? I'm at my autumn low, baby, just take me home tonight. Cold as the only color, cold as the ground beneath my feet. Bold was this drafted soldier before we slept out on the street. We all got a number, baby, we can never tell when time is up. I wish I could have been a better friend to you, but what more could I do? Lit up the sky tonight, let's set the world alight. Fill up this desperate show, oh, with your warming glow. I'm at my autumn low, oh, won't you take me home tonight? Break me or let me win, don't care, just let me in.
And I am done with my checkerboard macrame wall hanging. I'm so glad that I got to test out these new cords. Thank you to Yanka for sending me all of those. It was really interesting for me to see how the macrame cords can be just done differently. So throughout the video, I went through some of those differences, like how these were on a spool instead of like a bundle. So that one makes a difference for when you're cutting the cords, for example. Another difference that I didn't really talk about is that these cords that I was working with, they're inside, they are filled with like a synthetic cord. You can kind of see if I pull out the white that's inside of them, whereas the bobini cords that I'm used to, they're all like fully cotton. So if I pull this out, you can see that it's the same, and it's the same color, like just the same cotton cords as like the outer shell, which at some point I thought this might be a little bit difficult, because when you cut the cords like at the bottom, you would be able to see the white, but I don't think in the end you actually can. But it's still something to just keep in mind. Again, just an interesting difference, I think, to notice. Other than that, when it comes to like the texture of the cords or how I was working with them, I didn't really notice anything that would be different. So really it was those two things, how they were made, like what was the inner cord, the inner part, the inner stuffing, and how they were woven onto a spool or in a bundle. I hope you have enjoyed watching me test this new thing, and that hopefully you like the pattern as well, and maybe something that you can try yourselves. And that is it from me today. I will see you in my next video. Bye.